July 11th, 2001. A woman is dying at 9 to 200 feet in the Teton Mountains of Wyoming. Ground rescue teams say 6 hours to reach her. She doesn't have 6 hours. Then a private helicopter lifts off from a ranch 15 miles south. The pilot isn't military, isn't a professional paramedic. He's Harrison Ford, the man the world knows as Indiana Jones, as Han Solo, as the face on 1,000 movie posters. But what he does in the next 12 minutes has nothing to do with Hollywood scripts. There are no cameras, no publicists, no audience. Just a 59-year-old man, a $2 million helicopter, and a decision that will cost him the one thing money can't buy back: anonymity. Here's the story. Teton County, Wyoming, July 11th, 2001, 10:37 a.m. Temperature 95 degrees Fahrenheit. Sarah George, 36 years old, journalist from Chicago, lies unconscious on a granite ledge near the summit of Table Mountain, altitude 9,200 feet. She's been missing for 18 hours. No water, no shade. Her lips cracked and bleeding. The air so thin each breath feels like half of one. She came to Wyoming to write a story about wilderness hiking, planned a solo day trip. 6 hours, the guidebook said. Easy terrain. She took 2 water bottles, a granola bar, a cell phone with no signal. At hour 4, she took a wrong turn. At hour 7, she ran out of water. At hour 12, she stopped sweating. At hour 15, she stopped checking her watch. At hour 18, she stopped moving. Now she's face down on a rock shelf 3 meters wide. Below her, a 400-foot drop into a canyon that rangers call the graveyard. Above her, empty sky that doesn't care. Her body temperature, 104 degrees. Heart rate, 142 beats per minute. Severe dehydration, possible heat stroke, possibly dying. The Teton County Search and Rescue dispatcher receives the call at 10:22 a.m. A hiking group spotted what looks like a body on Table Mountain. Used binoculars, saw movement, called it in. The dispatcher checks the map, calculates distance, terrain difficulty, ground team availability, 6 hours minimum to hike in, maybe 8 to carry someone out. He makes the call nobody wants to make, dials a number written on a card taped to his desk. It rings twice. Ford. Mr. Ford, this is Teton County Search and Rescue. We have a possible heat stroke victim on Table Mountain. Ground teams are 6 hours out. Are you available? Silence. 3 seconds. Long enough to calculate fuel. Wind conditions, risk, 12 minutes. The line goes dead. What the dispatcher doesn't know is what Harrison Ford was doing when the phone rang. He was reading a script. A studio sent it overnight. An action film. They want him to play a rescue helicopter pilot who saves people from disasters. The irony would be funny if it wasn't so predictable. The offer, $8 million for 12 weeks of work. Ford closed the script 20 minutes ago, wrote one word on the cover page: no. Now he's running across 200 acres of ranch land toward a private hangar. No stunt coordinator, no safety crew, no insurance company calculating acceptable risk, just Ford. A Bell 407 helicopter he bought with his own money, and a stranger dying on a mountain he can see from his kitchen window. He reaches the hangar, pulls the door open. The helicopter sits there, white and red, spotless. Ford doesn't keep it clean for appearances. He keeps it clean because dirt in rotors kills people. He does his own maintenance, has for 4 years, learned from a mechanic in Montana who taught him that if you trust your life to a machine, you better know every bolt in it. Ford climbs in, no co-pilot, no paramedic, no medical equipment beyond a first aid kit and a folding stretcher he keeps in the back seat. He starts the engine. The rotors begin to turn, slow, then faster, then a blur. The whole frame shakes. He checks the gauges. Fuel, full. Oil pressure, good. Wind speed 37 mph with gusts to 45. Not ideal, not impossible. He lifts off at 10:39 a.m., 2 minutes since the call. The ranch disappears below him. Jackson Hole spreads out like a map. Tourists at hotel pools, families at breakfast, a film crew 3 miles north shooting a commercial nobody will remember. None of them know what's happening. That's how Ford wants it. Altitude, 6,000 feet, then 7,000. The air gets thinner. The engine works harder. At 8,000 feet, the helicopter loses 20% of its power. At 9,000 feet, it loses 40%. Ford has flown this route before, 6 times, saved 6 people, 2 hikers with broken legs, 1 climber with a concussion, 1 teenager lost for 2 days, 1 elderly man having a heart attack, 1 woman bitten by a rattlesnake. Each time he landed, loaded them, flew them to safety. Each time he refused to talk about it afterward. Because for Harrison Ford, there's a difference between acting like a hero and being one, and that difference is silence. The GPS coordinates flash on the screen. Table Mountain, north face, 9,200 feet. Ford adjusts course. The wind hits harder up here. Gusts slam the helicopter sideways. He compensates. Left, right, up. The mountain fills his windshield. Grey granite, sparse trees, no flat ground, no place to land. 10:47 a.m. He sees her. A dark shape on a light rock, not moving. He circles once, twice, looks for a landing zone. There isn't one. The ledge is 10 feet wide. The helicopter needs 12. Below the ledge, nothing but air and death. Above it, vertical rock face. Landing is impossible. Hovering is suicide. Winds at this altitude can throw a helicopter into the mountain in 2 seconds. Ford has a third option, one that no flight manual recommends, one that he learned from a rescue pilot in Alaska who told him, "Sometimes the book is wrong and the person dies. Sometimes you ignore the book and maybe you both die. Sometimes you ignore the book and you both live. You get 1 second to choose." Ford chooses. He descends, slow. The altimeter drops. 19,300 feet, 9,250, 9,200. He brings the helicopter down until only the front landing skid touches the rock. Just the front. The rear skid is still in the air. The engine stays on, the rotors spinning 3 feet from a granite wall. If he shifts weight wrong by 2 degrees, the helicopter tips backward into a 400-foot fall. Ford unbuckles, opens the door. Wind tries to rip it off the hinges. He holds it, steps out, 1 foot on the skid, 1 foot on rock, the helicopter shaking, the rotors screaming, the whole machine balanced on physics and prayer. He crawls to Sarah George. She's face down. He touches her shoulder, no response, checks her pulse, weak, fast, her skin hot and dry. Classic heat stroke. He rolls her over, her eyes open, barely. "You're Harrison Ford," she whispers. Ford doesn't answer, doesn't have time for autographs. He's checking her pupils, dilated, checking her breathing, shallow. He pulls a folding stretcher from his belt, unfolds it beside her, lifts her. 136 pounds that feel like 200 at this altitude. His heart hammering, sweat in his eyes. He drags the stretcher toward the helicopter, 6 feet, 4 feet, 2 feet. The rear skid is still in the air. He has to load her through the side door while keeping the weight balanced, or the whole thing tips. He lifts her, slides her onto the back seat. Her head lolls. He straps her in, 3-point harness, tight. He climbs back in, closes the door, sits, buckle. Hands on controls. Nobody speaks. Not Ford, not Sarah, just the sound of rotor blades cutting through thin air. He lifts. The front skid leaves the rock. The helicopter rises. 10 feet, 20, 50, clear of the mountain. Ford exhales for the first time in 4 minutes. Sarah George opens her eyes again, looks at him in the rearview mirror. "You just saved my life." Ford looks back at her, his jaw tight. His eyes tired. "Don't talk yet. Just breathe." 10:49 a.m. 12 minutes since he took off. He turns the helicopter south toward Jackson, toward St. John's Medical Center. The flight takes 11 minutes. He doesn't speak. Sarah drifts in and out of consciousness. At one point she asks, "Why did you come?" Ford doesn't answer. At another point, she says, "Thank you." Ford says, "Save it for the doctors." He lands on the helipad at St. John's Medical Center at 11 a.m. exactly. Paramedics rush out with a gurney. Ford helps transfer Sarah, gives a brief description of symptoms, turns to leave. "Wait," a nurse says, "the press is going to want to talk to you." Ford stops, looks at the nurse. One word, no. No explanation, no discussion. He walks back to the helicopter, climbs in, takes off. By the time the hospital administrator comes outside to thank him, he's gone. A dot in the sky. Then nothing. 2 weeks pass. Sarah George recovers, leaves the hospital, tries to find Harrison Ford, leaves 4 messages at his agent's office. No response. Writes a letter, no response. Drives to his ranch. A polite assistant meets her at the gate. Thanks her on Ford's behalf. Asks her kindly not to return. It's not rudeness. It's a boundary. The same boundary Ford has built around every good thing he does when nobody's watching. Because the moment you let cameras in, the moment you give interviews, the moment you turn saving someone's life into content, it stops being about them. It starts being about you. Sarah doesn't understand this yet. She thinks Ford is being modest, shy. She tells friends, "He saved my life and won't even let me thank him." They tell her, "That's so Harrison Ford." They laugh. They don't get it either. 3 weeks after the rescue, Ford's agent gets a call. A producer from Universal Pictures. They heard about the rescue. They want to buy the rights to the story. They're offering $5 million. They'll make it a TV movie. Harrison Ford plays himself. They already have a writer, already have a director. All they need is Ford's signature. The agent calls Ford, relays the offer, waits for a response. Ford is silent for 5 seconds. "No." "Harrison, it's $5 million for a story that already happened." "I said no." "They'll go up. I can get 7, maybe 10. "Tell them it's not for sale." "Everything's for sale, Harrison. Not this." The agent tries again. "What do I tell them?" Ford thinks. Then says 7 words that will get leaked to the press within 48 hours. "It wasn't entertainment. It was a person's life." The producer calls back. Raises the offer. $10 million. Ford can have script approval. Creative control. Final cut. He can donate it all to charity if he wants. Just say yes. Ford says no. The producer doesn't understand. Neither does the agent. Neither does Hollywood. They live in a world where everything has a price, where every moment can be monetized, where saving someone's life is just another story to option, where heroism is intellectual property. But Ford lives in a different world, one where some things cost more when you sell them, where gratitude loses value the second it becomes publicity, where privacy is the only luxury fame can't touch unless you let it. He doesn't let it. 6 entertainment outlets call his publicist. 60 Minutes wants an interview. Good Morning America wants him in studio. The Today Show offers a full hour. People magazine offers a cover. Ford declines everything. His publicist asks, "Why?" Ford says, "Because I'm not promoting a movie. I just helped someone who needed help." But people want to hear about it. Then they can hear it from her, not me. Sarah George does talk, does interviews, tells the story to local news, to friends, to anyone who asks, describes the helicopter appearing like something from a movie. Harrison Ford stepping out. The wind, the danger, the calm in his voice when he said, "Don't talk yet, just breathe." She cries every time she tells it, calls him a hero, says she owes him her life. Ford never confirms any of it, never adds details, never corrects her version. He lets her have the story. He just won't participate in turning it into spectacle. Journalists camp outside his ranch for 12 days, set up cameras, wait for him to drive past, to say something, anything. Ford drives past every morning, waves once, keeps going. On day 13 they leave. The story dies, moves off the front page, off the back page, into archives that nobody reads. But not out of Sarah George's memory. 2 years after the rescue, Sarah gives birth to a son. She names him Harrison, not as a last name, as a middle name, Michael Harrison George. When friends ask why, she tells them about July 11th, 2001, about the man who came out of nowhere, who risked his life for a stranger, who disappeared before she could say thank you properly. Some of her friends think it's weird, naming your kid after a movie star. She corrects them. I didn't name him after a movie star. I named him after the man who gave me a second chance to become a mother. Michael Harrison George turns 8. Asks his mom why his middle name is Harrison. She tells him the full story about the mountain, the helicopter, the stranger who became her unnamed guardian angel. Michael asks, can we meet him? Sarah says, I tried. He doesn't want to be found. Michael Harrison George graduates high school, wants to become a pilot, not because of the movies, because of a story his mother told him 1,000 times about what real courage looks like when nobody's watching. He applies to flight school, gets in, writes an essay about why he wants to fly. The last line, because someone once used a helicopter to save my mother's life, and I want to spend mine doing the same for others. 23 years after the rescue, a small plaque is installed at Jackson Hole Airport. It lists the names of volunteer search and rescue pilots who've served Teton County. 47 names. No photos, no descriptions. Just names in alphabetical order. Harrison Ford is number 19. Sarah George sees it during a trip back to Wyoming. Takes a photo, posts it on Facebook, writes, 23 years later, still grateful, still impossible to thank properly. The post gets 11 shares. None of them reach Ford. He doesn't have social media, doesn't Google himself, doesn't track mentions. He's too busy flying. Today, Harrison Ford is 82 years old, still has his pilot's license, still volunteers for Teton County Search and Rescue, still pays for fuel and maintenance out of pocket, still refuses every interview request about that day. When asked at a film press junket about his real-life heroism, he deflects, we're here to talk about fiction. Because for Ford, there's a sacred difference between acting like a hero and being one. One pays residuals, one costs silence. And for a man who spent 50 years under spotlights, silence is the only luxury he protects ferociously. Have you ever done something good that nobody knows about? Something you chose not to talk about because talking about it would change what it meant? Think about that. Then ask yourself, when was the last time someone with Ford's level of fame turned down $10 million to keep a story private? The answer is almost never. Because Hollywood teaches actors that their value increases with exposure. That privacy is something you sacrifice for success. That heroism only counts if it trends. Harrison Ford rejected that lesson. Chose invisibility over influence, chose one woman's gratitude over a generation's applause. And maybe that's why this story still matters 23 years later. Not because Ford saved a life, firefighters do that daily without Oscar statues, but because he treated that day like the most important moment of his life that nobody should ever see filmed. While Hollywood sells plastic versions of courage for $15 a ticket, Ford keeps the real thing locked in a hangar in Wyoming, between helicopter tools and memories he'll never monetize. Sarah George is 59 now, healthy, happy, still tells the story, still gets emotional. Her son Michael is 21, second year of flight school, learning to navigate the same mountains where his mother almost died, learning that heroism isn't about being seen doing the right thing. It's about doing the right thing whether anyone sees or not. Ford taught him that without ever meeting him, without a single interview, without a single publicity photo, just by showing up when called, by leaving when the job was done, by refusing to let Hollywood turn 12 minutes of real courage into 2 hours of fake drama. It wasn't entertainment. It was a person's life. That phrase Ford said to his agent in 2001, it's been quoted in aviation journals, in ethics classes, in discussions about celebrity responsibility, but Ford has never repeated it, never expanded on it, never written a think piece about what it means. He just lives it. Every time he gets in that helicopter, every time he declines an interview, every time he chooses silence over story. Because Harrison Ford understands something Hollywood forgot, that some moments become smaller when you shine a light on them. That gratitude doesn't need an audience. That the highest form of heroism is the kind nobody applauds because nobody knows it happened, except it did happen, July 11th, 2001. 10:37 a.m. to 11 a.m., 23 minutes that changed one woman's life forever. That gave a child his name. That gave a young man his purpose. That proved to one tiny corner of Wyoming that the man who pretended to be Indiana Jones for 40 years had something real underneath the costume all along. Not the whip, not the hat, not the scripted one-liners, just a human being who saw someone dying and decided that his comfort, his privacy, his peace mattered less than their life, and then decided that letting the world celebrate him for it would corrupt the purity of what he'd done. So he didn't let them. Still doesn't. Probably never will. Somewhere in Wyoming right now, there's a helicopter in a private hangar, polished, maintained, ready. There's an 82-year-old man who can fly it better than pilots half his age. There's a phone number on a dispatcher's desk. And there's an unspoken agreement that if the phone rings, the helicopter lifts off. No press release, no photo op, no post-rescue interview tour, just silence. And a life saved. And a man who knows the difference between being famous for playing heroes and being the kind of person who doesn't need anyone to know he is one. And unfortunately, they don't make men like Harrison Ford anymore.